So, Phil, I'm going to try to stand up on your shoulders and see how far the ideas that you just built will now allow me to see. Um, but first, let me see if I can recap what you did say. That our experience is always an adaptation to certain elements that matter for us for some reason. In other words, um, experience adapts based on our desires for objects in the world, and these desires teach us something about the world, about ourselves as well. So we learn from them, and this paradoxical way of understanding how best to learn from desires that you've come up with, that actually we ignore our desires by acting upon them. I think it's very Buddhist, first of all, and this really made me think of the deepest meaning underlying the Four Noble Truths, which I'll get to in a second. But the idea that desire arises, um, and that we can only get rid of it by ignoring it, is true in this sense. So this is how I'm imagining it. That really, what you're pointing out is our only true desire ever is not to desire. So as soon as one of these desires for some particular object arise, we immediately try to find a way um, to fill it such that we can then ignore it. Um, we replace one desire for another, in other words. Um, but the root underlying all of this is this just the basic desire to ignore, the basic desire not to desire. And this is what Buddha came to realize, I think, that there is suffering, that normally we exist in samsara, and that's the first noble truth. And Buddha also recognized that the cause of this suffering is our desire. It's not our desire for anything specific, but just the fact that we desire at all. And Buddha also discovered that there is cessation to this craving, and it comes by the fourth noble truth, which is following the way, basically, following the path, the eightfold path, which right livelihood, right thought, right speech, and so forth. But there is a more subtle way of understanding what this means. It's similar to what Aristotle talked about in terms of moderation, in terms of eudaimonia, which is the Greek for basically um, achieving a happy spirit or a happy soul. Um, it's about finding the middle way, I think, which I'm wondering if this is what's implied by um, recognizing the ignorance of desire, this continual attempt to satisfy and reach for the particular thing that our desire happens to attach to in any given moment, um, is an addiction because it's an ignorance of desire, and so it leads in a circle. It is samsara. And what you were saying, Phil, is that if we want to find cessation for this continual cycle of desire and ignorance, um, we have to sit with the want, sit with the desire, face it. And I wonder, what do we find? I mean, initially they can be quite frightening, right? And if you continue to sit with it, the ideal would be for it to come more and more to look like your own reflection, something that you are at home with, that you can recognize and that you're not afraid of. Um, because ultimately it is you. You come to see that the desire arises from you, and if you allow the desire to be a lack, which you then try to fill, you're just going to get dizzy because you're spinning around in a circle. And you become more and more confused as this process continues um, to pull you out of yourself. Um, and to meditate, maybe, is to come back to yourself, to recognize when the desires emerge and arise, and to see them for what they are. Not a lack of something, but desire itself. So instead of ignoring desire and experiencing it as a lack, experience it as present. Because when you do that, then it disappears. Because your being, prior to a desire as something you lack, is full. It's whole. It's only after you want something which you assume you lack that it appears to become fractured. So you definitely stumbled on an interesting twist here of how we usually consider desire, Phil, and it definitely is um, enlightening, at least for me. So it was an idea we should continue to explore.